Welcome back, folks, to Delivering More. I'm your host, Ben Alcar, and we have another wonderful Meet the Team to bring to you folks today. I have an OG to the DeliverThat team, Dan Hoffman, in the building today. Dan,
how are you, Ben?
how we doing?
I'm doing well. I just banged right into the desk because I raised the seat so I look taller.
got a nice beard trim that no one will know that it's trimmed, but you said it got trimmed?
Judging what I saw on the floor, it got trimmed.
Yeah, it looks good.
I think it looks good, Dan.
Yeah, I like it. Always
Both of you would be right. It does.
Always rocking the hat. Dan, I want to actually we'll get into your tenure with DeliverThat a little later on. I'm gonna start out how we always start out. So obviously we just want the folks out there to get to know our team members a little bit better. Obviously, Dan Hoffman. So you are an older brother of Aaron, the CEO. Well, old CEO. Now, what is he, head of strategy? Used to be CEO, is a co-founder with John. So you're obviously in the Hoffman bloodline. So we'll address that along the way as well. But we'll start it out here. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was thinking of like trying to do something like Bane from Batman. Like I was born in darkness and I was raised there. No, I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. So I want to say up until about 10 years old, I lived there and then kind of moved around to some just suburbs, more or less, like a little bit in Mogador, a little bit in Monroe Falls, then Stowe. So I've always been Northeast Ohio. I just not much for traveling. And
where'd you go to high school?
High school, I went to a private school. It's called Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy.
Oh, CVCA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
The way we always used to like say, they're like, oh, what's that? And I was like, it's across the street from Walsh Jesuit. And they'd be like, I know exactly where that is. And I was like, yeah, that's, you see that little tiny building there with like the 5 people that get off the bus and like 6 cars in the parking lot? Yeah, that's us.
Was that like so like Central Catholic? I know, Jim, you go to St. Mike's, then you go to Central Catholic. Did they have a middle school? Or was it always, was CVCA like K through 12?
It wasn't K through 12, but they did have a feeder school.
Okay.
And that feeder school, there are 2 branches of it, at least back when I went there. They had Chapel Hill Christian, so you had a location in like the green area, and also right over by Old Chapel Hill Mall.
Okay.
And so that was like their feeder system. So most kids, that was pre-K through 6th grade. So you'd go there, right. And then CVCA was your middle school, which at the time was 7th and 8th grade. And then also included there was the high school, so 9 through 12. So they had all this kind of lumped in there. But, it's you grew up, like literally, I went to school with folks from the time I was,
you knew
6 years old until, 18. Some I'm still friends with and have contact with. It's kind of crazy that because of the way that those schools feed into one another that you're just around them through your entire education.
How many kids did you graduate with? Was it small? It's got to be small, right?
Yeah, I want to say maybe just over 100,
yeah.
106.
Okay.
Maybe. And so, we had one of the larger classes.
You know everyone. Like everyone knows everyone. Yeah.
Which is annoying, but also,
Once you get that reputation, no matter what it is,
you can't shake it.
Yeah, right. You're done.
But the nice thing is your like legacy lasts because you're not. It's such a small community that like word still gets, down. So people, in 8th grade knew about me, and it's hopefully stories were good and are still being passed along for ways to get out of trouble, how to deal with in-school suspensions, all of that good stuff.
I feel like you were possibly a notorious in-school and possibly after-school detention member, I guess we could say. We'll moving right along though. When you're in high school, maybe I don't know. Child labor was maybe a thing back then as well. I'm not necessarily sure. When was your first job growing up? How old? Where are we? What are we doing?
Well, the first job I got paid for. Was my dad. Aaron and I share the same father, so our dad had bought a used appliance shop. And he had actually gone into business with Aaron's uncle, named Craig. And so they got this used appliance shop, and my dad had myself and my older brother, Andy, there doing sort of like the cleaning of the stuff and checking it and all that. So I was probably 13 years old, and Andy would have been 15. So we'd go there 3 days a week, probably 5-6 hours for a shift. And, my dad would pay us. Now, we didn't understand like what was under the table versus legit. So we weren't, it's not like I had to, I got a W-2 at the end of the year. But that was the first job where like, hey, you're expected to be here at this time. This is a shift you're working, and this is what I'm going to pay you, for your time that you put in.
What about the first job outside of a family business?
Outside of that, it would have been at Giant Eagle in Hudson,
Hell
Ohio.
yeah. Giant Eagle. Shout out GE.
So I was 16 and late into my age 16 period. So this would be the start of my junior year of high school. And a friend of mine had worked there, said, hey, we need folks to help out in the stock room and whatever. And I said, sure, whatever. So it was like, 15 hours a week, getting paid nothing, because you get paid minimum wage. And back in 1998,
$6 and some change.
Yeah, something like, and plus union dues. We had to pay because you're part of like the United Commercial Food Workers.
Grocery store worker.
I actually think it's the United Commercial Food Workers Union. So, I'm getting paid nothing, which is, it is what it is.
50 cents of that a paycheck.
It was
into
more
the
than
union
that.
dues.
Yeah, it was like they take like a fixed amount as opposed to like a percentage. Like, hey, you owe us at least $25 a pay, and I was like, that's half of it.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it was actually I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, it was, just that experience working in that type of environment. I think it's a good place. A lot of folks.
Yeah,
their first job was in grocery
I think
stores.
a ton of people have probably started in similar nature. We'll once we get out of high school, were you a college guy?
Yeah. Straight from out of high school, I went to I applied to several colleges, got accepted, but I decided just to stay closer to home. It was just easier. I mean, say what you will, I'm not a big fan of moving. I never enjoyed that, and so at the end of the day, I ended up going to Kent State.
Okay.
So
still can't read, still can't write. Dan Hoffman.
Can't read,
can't
write,
read,
Kent State.
Can't read, can't write, Kent State.
Yeah, but I said he still can't read, he still can't write.
Can't read, okay.
Yeah, I got it right.
Yeah.
It was just over your head, Jim.
He went to Kent State too.
That is incorrect.
He wishes he did. I lived next to Josh.
Might have got the degree if he did.
Yeah, I lived next to Josh Cribbs for 2 years. So there's a story. Yeah.
Okay, wait. So were you there like Antonio Gates was there too?
And Julian Edelman, right?
You're probably a little before.
I think Edelman was
might have been
like
after
2
you.
years.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotcha.
But no, interesting. You talk about Antonio Gates and Josh Cribbs and such. So when I went there, their football team really wasn't much, but you had heard about Josh Cribbs. But that was also the year that I want to say my sophomore year was the year Kent State went to the Elite Eight.
Okay.
I want to say they lost to Indiana in that, and I remember that in that same bracket or whatever, not necessarily bracket, but Duke had already lost, and Duke was considered the favorite.
Right.
So whoever wins the Kent State-Indiana game now is playing a team that upset Duke, but wasn't
they're
considered
a lower
really
seed, right?
a threat.
Yeah.
And so, I think Indiana won by maybe 11 or something like that. I mean, it wasn't super close, but then they went on to beat whomever beat Duke, and I think Indiana lost in the title game. But that was just a really cool experience being in that environment, and related to Antonio Gates. So Gates playing basketball,
Right.
Then
He didn't play football till like senior year or something, I think. Right?
I honestly don't even know if he played.
Yeah.
To the best of my recollection, he may have played his senior year a little bit, but a friend of mine was on the cheerleading squad at Kent State. So as part of that, they get access to the field house if they want to work out, as opposed to like the rec center. So I would tag along with them and go work out at the field house, and that's where I met Antonio Gates.
No.
Mm-hmm. Not anything. It's not like we became best friends, but just introduced.
In passing.
Just, hey, nice to meet you, more or less. But it's just kind of cool, like, no way, shape, or form that I'm like, I just met
like,
a future Hall of Famer.
At the time, though, like, there was no awareness that that's what he was going to become, though. You know what I mean? Like,
I'd have to say exactly right. Like, you knew he was good at basketball,
Right.
but he was one of those
You
fellas.
didn't know he was going to go play for 15 seasons and like have 10,000 yards receiving.
Yeah,
Like,
basically a first ballot Hall of Famer. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he was undersized for basketball. If you're talking about going to the NBA, I want to say he was like 6'4",
Yeah.
but built like a power forward. That doesn't translate so well to the NBA, but his athleticism obviously caught the eyes
took him
of
places. But did we graduate? What did we get a degree? What was that in?
Yeah, so I initially was like looking at 5 years to graduate, and everything was going as planned. I got into a little bit of a weird situation in the beginning of my 5th year, so I had to drop out. And basically, when I looked to just kind of like weighing my options, the problem was that I had everything done except for one major class left and all my foreign language requirements.
Huh, Jim.
I'm not a fan of those foreign
Jim,
languages either.
You don't say
So,
foreign language.
Like I think it was like beginner Spanish 1 and 2, and then intermediate 1 and 2, just sitting there on a platter, and I'm like,
trying to deliver that.
Yeah, I was like, I can't stack all these. So, I didn't aggressively pursue my degree until maybe about 2010. My grandmother on my mom's side was getting sick, and somehow grandparents are, they want to see.
She wasn't going to put you in the will unless you got the degree.
A lot like that. But you want to try to.
That's
that
what my
meant
grandma
something.
always told me, and I didn't even come close. So I don't think I was.
I would just be like, I'll just forge your will. Don't worry about it. I got this. But that's sort of like little bit of a fire, and then I finished up my credits through Tri-C.
Okay.
I talked to Kent State's department heads, and they basically just gave me an outline for, hey, these are the classes.
Knock
these
it
are
out in like
qualified.
a semester or a year or whatever.
Yeah, I was able to do it back to back because I couldn't stack them. So I went fall, spring, summer 1, summer 2.
Oh, okay.
So basically in a calendar year,
Right.
I was able to get those done. So yeah, my degree is hiding somewhere. I actually think it might be.
What was it in?
It's behavioral psychology.
Okay.
So, a social science, of course, it always seems interesting when you get out of high school, like something along those lines, because you're still forming, your brain's still forming. So you're like, what's going on up here? I'd like to learn what's going on up here, because then maybe I'll understand other people too. Well, it never works out that way.
So you actually finally get your degree in 2010.
2011.
2011. So we're not then that far removed from when DeliverThat actually begins in 2013, 2014, right? So briefly, what are we doing between those 3 to 4 years? Do we have other jobs? What are we doing?
You can see like sweat beads where I am like, oh God, I thought I'd never have to tell these stories. Not much. At that time, I was in sales, so personal lines.
Yeah, sales is sales. I hate it.
The insurance and such like that, and I was doing well in that field, but it just no passion for it.
Yeah, right.
Good at it, but ultimately you just don't feel it.
That's
inside.
what I always say to people. Like, if you're just signing up, it's like if you don't believe in what you're actually selling, like you didn't create the product, like how much can you actually sell it?
And then, once I got out of that industry, I went back to the restaurant industry. Now, I know we didn't touch on this. As soon as I got out of high school, the job I had from, the moment I left high school all through college, because it's how I paid my, my share of my tuition through that period, was working at Papa John's. So, yeah.
Papa John's.
Yeah.
I just smacked a stuffed crust pizza over the weekend.
But so I worked in more or less every capacity you could work there. And like I said, it was a good, fun job, especially when I transitioned to the Kent State campus store, which was a little crazy. But either way, that was my first foray into the restaurant industry and just getting familiar with that. So after sales, I transitioned back into, working at restaurants. And it was just a degree of something I was comfortable with, something I seemed to excel at for whatever that's worth. Basically, I did that in several different capacities. So from maybe 2013 to 2015, 2016.
Right.
Yeah, late 2016. So more than a handful of years. I'd say in total in my professional life, I've spent probably just over 10 years in restaurant work. You know, the majority of that management, but
Yeah. And then, I mean, you almost have to include your time to deliver that as well then, in a similar vein, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
Not
more or less.
directly with the restaurants, but you're providing a service to them.
Well, I taught them how to manage their kitchen and what orders go with what. But no, it was a great, having that knowledge on my end.
The understanding of the operation
And,
side of things. Yeah.
You know, when we were looking to first secure partners, it was nice because you had somebody, you know, I was fortunate to be in a position where I could talk to their managers about, you know, how to make the most of, you know, the opportunity we're presenting. Like, hey, if we're going to do this, you know, at a larger scale, you know, this is what I'm seeing. Like, this is how we can stack orders. This is how things should be packed. This is, you know, and these are just back and forths. I'm not sitting there as like the truth. It's just being able to have a conversation of saying, you know, I think we can make this work. What do you got going on at your store level? They share that with me. I understand it because I've been in that situation before. And so then we can strategize together.
Let's rewind a little bit too, because we're kind of getting into what you actually started out doing with DeliverThat. But I want to get back to like the 2013, 2014 period when it actually kind of begins at OU. John and Aaron are together. When did you first hear about DeliverThat? How did you hear about it? And like, I gotta imagine, I think like with most people's like random business ideas, you're usually like, yeah, like go ahead, like give it a go. We'll see what happens. Like, but early on, were you like catering, or well, at the time it was food delivery, not even catering or like any delivery. So you're just like, what? Yeah, all right, man. Like, good idea. Like, what was your actual initial like thoughts on it?
In all honesty, I had my first recollection. I may have heard of it before, but my first recollection was Aaron's aunt and uncle, is his mom's sister and her husband, mentioning like, hey, did you hear what your brother's up to? And Aaron's a lot younger than I am, so 12 years. And, you know, so we weren't close growing up. I mean, when he's just a youngster, I'm getting ready to go, you know, I'm becoming an adult and doing my own thing. So when it says like, oh, he's up to this, well, I have no idea what he's capable of. I'm remembering an Aaron that's like 10 years old. So I was just like, all right, good for them. To me, it almost sounded like kind of like almost like a school project that you would have, like closer to like a major requirement. And this is just sort of like, hey, create an operation and see
we'll
what
see
happens.
if it's fruitful. Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I heard, but I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, all right, good for them. But it wasn't something that led me to like ask questions like, well, what do you know? Or I didn't get on the phone and call Aaron and say, hey, what's going on down there? It's just kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
You know?
Good luck.
Yeah. But like DoorDash and such, and Postmates may be a smaller presence, but even in Canton, and I lived in Akron at the time, it wasn't like super saturated. So what they were doing probably didn't resonate, only because like Postmates wasn't big around the Akron, Canton area. DoorDash wasn't. And so it's not like you're not like seeing where this could go.
Right.
Because I'm just kind of like, somebody says Postmates, and I'm just like, what's that? And
Yeah.
like, well, they pick up stuff and deliver. And I'm like,
Why can't I just go get it?
Yeah. And at that time, too, you look at like 2013, 2014, Amazon's getting really big at that time. But still, like Prime was relatively new, like this sort of on-demand, get it really quick.
Yeah, it was just forming.
Yeah. They were kind of ironing out all the kinks. So, you know, that may have attributed to my, you know, saying, hey, cool, but not tell me more.
Yeah, right. So 2013, 2014, DeliverThat begins. We know about it. We're not familiar with it, but we know it's going on. 2016, they graduate from OU, move back to Canton. Then you start to get involved, or how do we actually then get roped into helping out the business?
Roped in?
I mean, that's what I'm going to call
Aaron
it.
just put me in a bag and just beat me against it.
I'm going to say roped in. I don't know how you would phrase it, but yeah, how do we get started?
So, you know, I talked about going back into the restaurant industry, you know, in that period, and just sort of become more and more disillusioned just because the nonsense that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes you don't feel like there's upward movement either. It can
and
be
it's
kinda
like,
difficult.
it's like you can't move upward because
Unless
every
you,
day
like-
you're running into
yeah.
the same problems, folks calling off, and you just
You're the manager, but you guys still got to do all the other things.
I'm out there cooking, I'm out there
Right,
serving
yeah.
tables, busing, doing
Yeah.
dishwashing work, and which are all crucial to a restaurant operation.
Right.
But I had grown to saying I can't do this. At this time I'm almost maybe 34 or getting close to being 34, and I was just like, I can't do it. Like, I don't know how anybody could do this for a career. You have to just have. You just have to be built a certain way.
Yeah.
And I'm not built that way. So word got back to Aaron from my older brother, Andy, that, I was ready to throw my kind of hands up there. And so Aaron had mentioned to Andy in passing, he's like, well, maybe he'd want to know about what we're planning to do now that we're graduating and coming home. And I'm completely ignorant to the fact that this has gone anywhere.
Right. Like they've actually developed like the idea a little bit. Right.
Yeah. And obviously in different universities across Ohio, I'm sort of ignorant to all this. So Andy says, hey, why don't you meet with Aaron? We'll grab lunch over at Poncho's, in Green.
Don
Yeah.
Poncho's. Shout out
to
Don
Don Poncho.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Uh-huh. And that's sort of where, we just sat down, had lunch. Aaron, as best as he could at the time, kind of explained what was, what he wanted to do
Right.
back here. And again, still DoorDash, Uber Eats,
It's like
not really.
It's starting to develop around that time, though.
But
probably.
you only had like a select few,
Right.
like I remember like
Major
McDonald's
markets.
maybe was
Yeah.
going with Uber Eats,
Yeah.
but it was very few and far between. So there was space, especially in smaller operations, single location operations.
and smaller markets too.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right,
Right.
because they had saturation in maybe like
LA, New York,
maybe even
yeah.
Cleveland, but
Yeah.
these Akron, Canton,
Right,
no
no one.
that's just not
Right.
that's just not happening. And so, 30, almost 34 or 34, and just like, have I really taken a risk in life when it comes to like a a career opportunity or something along those lines? No. So I was like, well, let's see what happens. The nice thing about if you work in the restaurant industry is that you can always get a job in the restaurant
Yeah,
industry.
you can always go back.
Hmm. So I figured, what's the worst that could happen? So kind of have a little conversation about that. I said, okay. I left, thought about it for 2 days, called them, and I said, I'm in. Put in my 2 weeks. At the time, I was bar manager at TGI Friday.
Oh yeah.
Not this one.
Oh,
there was the one
really?
on Interstate over
Okay.
by the movie theater in Green. But yeah, it was just, no sense in delaying. Let's go at it now. I want to say the day after the 2 weeks or something along those lines, I want to say it was September like 17th or 16th. I go meet John for the first time.
Are we still 2016?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So September, 2016, like
Okay.
middle of the month. And that's my first introduction to John. First time I've
Yeah.
ever met him. And at that time, just sharing like some insights that I know from the restaurant industry. Because, they want to approach businesses and solve a problem, or identify a problem and be able to speak that same language. So I was able to give him some terms and some ways in which those sort of affect an operation as a whole, some of the metrics that upper management really
They're
puts
concerned
pressure
about, yeah.
on your mid-level management or supervisors at the store level. It was a cool experience for me because, you think it's like an older brother. You want to be, you think it like, hey, I can impart wisdom or, or teach something, whether it be, like if I would have taught Aaron like how to play golf.
Right.
Like if we didn't have that distant relationship when we were younger, I played a lot of golf when I was, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, he was a little bit younger, but he could get out there and start swinging the clubs and then show him how to putt or something, just like passing along something that
Yeah.
I know something about.
And now you get the
And then-
opportunity to do that.
Exactly. And so that was a really cool experience for
Right.
me. And, it sort of helped transition, that relationship that had been kind of distant, obviously with him being back in Canton, but also, me engaging with this business, and we're working together as a small team, it really then sort of helped that true brotherly relationship
just the
that you
bond
ought to
a little
have.
more. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for all those years missed, I think that we've more than made up for it.
Yeah, I would say.
Over the last couple of years, as best as you can. You can never make up for lost
Right.
time. But, to have the relationship that we have now wouldn't have been possible without, him reaching out to my brother and my brother reaching out to me and facilitating that. I mean, sure, we'd still be family. We'd see each other. We'd nod our,
Yeah.
I'd tip my cap. We'd say hello. We'd chat, but it's all surface level. Whereas now it's just a much more brotherly
Yeah.
relationship, which is great.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So as far as my understanding of when you're starting, like you kind of start out in a partnership realm, right? Like almost what maybe like Cody or like Phil are doing out there. Like you're like helping out the partners, maybe going out and getting signups. You're also coordinating drivers, like you're helping actually get drivers assigned. You're probably taking deliveries when you have drivers who won't. I mean, at the time you're like texting drivers, right? We're not even like on fleet yet, so you're like texting drivers, calling drivers, like not even drivers, necessarily, just like your friends maybe at that point, just whoever you can.
I had
to take-
alienated all my friends from asking them. to
You're just
deliver
like,
by
oh,
that
you're
point.
just praying you can get someone else to do the delivery other than yourself. So what was your earliest like roles within the company, and then we'll get into what you're actually doing now.
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to say, I never was selling.
Okay.
Really, it's just not a strong suit of mine.
Well, yeah, we tried to sell together, and it, yeah. It
I
didn't
still
go
blame
great.
it on the person we met with. It had nothing to do with you and I. We had a very good message. They just didn't, read the emails beforehand.
shout out Einstein Bagels.
Bagels, yeah. And in the meantime, Aaron and John are sort of fine tuning the business model and reaching out to companies that they feel might, this might solve a problem. So they're handling that on their end, whereas I'm more or less, finding drivers, getting orders covered, taking orders, making sure that we make good on the promise that we made. Now,
Right.
the promise was much less complex than it is now, but at the end of the day, it's still solving a problem, eliminating just a massive stress at the store level, and doing it the way we say we're going to do it, on time, professionally, someone you can count on. Those haven't changed, but we've become much more advanced in how we
Yeah.
can guarantee those.
Just offering a lot more
Yeah.
to those core services. Yeah.
Exactly. As opposed to, me just running through the contact list like, hey, I talked to this person once, maybe, they want to try this or something along those lines. But yeah, so for the first maybe 18 months, that's what it was really about. It was taking a ton of deliveries myself, introducing potential drivers to the platform. That's still through the ride along concept that got sort of fleshed out there. And I do think this is important to mention, and maybe this gets cut, maybe it doesn't. But, at this time, John and Aaron know that, as a 34-year-old guy, I have expenses. I own a house, and I had other, debt that I had accrued in my previous years. And so the jump to this was a scary one from a financial standpoint.
Right.
So, John and Aaron were cognizant of that. So any, 100% of the delivery fee, went to me. They didn't take like an owner's cut or an
Right.
operational cut, so they could pass it along to me so that I could meet my obligations. They lived it at home,
Yeah.
because they didn't want to take on, an unnecessary expense so that they could, in a lot of ways, I hate to say, not give me the money, but do what they could to support.
Yeah, just support you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that's at the time, 23 or 22 years old, that's a mindset you don't see a lot, or a maturity to understand a situation, understand that somebody that's older than you is just in a different spot.
Especially when the business isn't like that profitable
No.
at the time, right? So like them paying you in full is possibly costing them opportunities to be able to further the business.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I wouldn't necessarily know, and I can say this: if it did, they never told me.
Yeah, they never let you feel
because
it.
they wouldn't want to, pass that
burden, whatever you want to call
that
it.
message because they probably understand it. Yeah, it is. No one wants to hear the
Right.
company can't move forward
Yeah.
as fast because we've got to.
Now we got to,
because of your
instead of
poor
paying you
financial
$25, we
decisions-
got to pay you $20 or something. Yeah.
Because of your poor financial choices, 5 years ago, now the company came before. But I think that is something that some folks might not know. That literally John and Aaron took nothing because they wanted to reinvest in the company, and they also wanted to, as best as they could, take care of me so that I could be stable as we got this off the ground.
So we kind of touched on, so then we're about like 2016, 2017, maybe even early like 2018 kind of in that discussion point. And then so once we hit 2018, the team starts to develop, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think 2018, D starts, Jim starts, I start, Christian starts, Mitch starts. It's like really the kind of the core of the team that's still here now starts to begin and take place. We've went from the Hoffman household as the business office to whatever you would call over here next to Planet Fitness. Then I don't know if we can say. I don't know if we want. I don't know if we want to
Didn't we
say
get
that.
kicked out of that place because we used the bathroom too much?
Yeah. I forget what it was called, but it was on Freedom app. Was it? No.
No, it wasn't on Freedom. It was on Munson.
Munson.
Yeah, Munson.
Couldn't
So-
make it out of Munson.
And then we go over the buildings next to Geeson House. We have Black Mold office and then the secondary office, and then we move here. So I mean,
Jim steals a palm tree.
Yeah, that's we'll touch on
Allegedly.
that, his meet the team. That was something. So I mean, we've now been through 4 or 5 offices. We're now upgrading this office so we can create a longer term stay here and really create kind of a stake in Canton as a whole. So love that we've kind of cemented our place here. But so now we're 5 years now later, now 2023, right? So, and your role within the company has, I don't even know like what verb I would use to put on it, but it's just changed entirely. I would say almost dramatically. You're not doing anything within dispatch. You're not handling anything within the driver realm. You're not worrying about the partners. You're much more, I would say, employee focused, and then you are very driver focused and partner focused, but you're more in terms of like the data analytics and kind of crunching numbers and things like that. Am I like in the ballpark of what you actually do on a day-to-day basis now, or give some
You're in the
tidbits on
ballpark,
that? Yeah.
and I'll kind of just break down a little bit more things. We talked about like the core folks, or when I say core folks, I just mean the folks that were here the longest.
Right.
It doesn't mean that.
Yeah, because I mean,
are,
there's people that have came and went since then as well. Also.
And believe me, there's plenty of core components out there that have come on in the last
for sure.
year
yeah,
two,
obviously.
and
Of
when I say
course.
core components, I mean core people.
Yeah,
of course.
Well, yeah, I mean everyone out there. We got
Exactly.
30 plus out there. They're the heart of the company.
But as you could attest, and Jim can attest, and anybody you've probably interviewed is the role that you had when you walked in the store is different than it is now. You mentioned earlier, hey, let's see if Ben can make get a contract.
Yeah.
with a company. So business development, in that respect. Jim, I can't even imagine how many hats you've worn. Driver relations manager.
Oh yeah, I kind
tra-
of forgot about that.
Traveling to
Holy
Detroit
shit.
and getting your and getting your catalytic converter stolen. So is that Baltimore?
They sent me to the worst cities, is what it was.
Purposefully.
Purposely,
They did the opposite of what they did for Dan.
No. Believe me,
No,
I got punished and got sent to DC and Baltimore.
No,
for
I will
14
say we
days.
all had our fair share of cities, but I feel like I got the short end of the stick on a lot of them.
Oh man.
But what we've seen over the course of time is for you again, business development, then into dispatching, as a lead there.
Yeah.
Now here, and this isn't all. I mean, you built a ton of stuff in the knowledge base, internal knowledge base, and external knowledge base, and now to the best of my knowledge, you're much more focused on our content creation and our media presence, and that's a great thing because we've been able to focus in on people's, what they do best and what they enjoy most. For Jim, still wears a ton of hats, but he's more focused on the things that he can make the biggest impact in.
For sure.
And we've seen the fruits of those labors. Now, for myself, yes, we talk about some of my roles previously. Yeah, we're in data analytics, but here's the great thing about the people that we work with is that folks, that I would talk to, Mitch, Brittany, Holly, Vic, yourself, but briefly, because that's sort of, I didn't get into that until you were getting close to transitioning out of dispatch. But they took an interest in what I was able to pull for them. And they wanted to see how that was done, just on my level. And believe me, I'm not a whiz in any stretch like that. But
especially when you're trying to pull data from a software that
I don't want
a little difficult to pull from.
It can be challenging, but it's an evolving. We're getting to that single source when it comes to data, information that we can exchange between departments. Mm-hmm. That's easily and can be interpreted easily and readily without any configuration. But these folks in these departments took a vested interest in learning how to do this stuff themselves, seeing what I did, and then improving it so that it gave them exactly what they needed, as opposed to me giving something that's more broad and say, here's the whole picture, because that's what I'm looking at and I'm interested in. Well, that's not what works best for them. Yeah, they can get some info out of that. It's useful. And I can drill it down, based upon what they're asking. But ultimately, they're still going to someone when they want to do it themselves. So I don't do a lot of data analytics anymore because these folks...
Yeah, they've learned how to do it themselves. Yeah.
They expressed an interest in knowing how we got this info and how you can structure it in a way that makes sense. So they learned, they've improved, and they do it on their own. Doesn't mean I'm not here to help.
Right.
But I don't need to. They've gotten better at it than I was.
Than maybe you were ever doing, for sure.
So we talk about more where I'm at is on the internal side. So benefits administration, payroll administration, I kind of like our hiring practices, our advertising when it comes to attracting talent to work within our office, paying attention to what the market's doing in these spaces so that we can always stay out ahead. We can be an employer of choice. So we have to have great benefits. We have to have significantly better than average pay. Our average hourly wage is almost 25% higher than similar positions within a 25-mile radius.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we need to stay competitive in that space. And it's a commitment across the board because what we do is not easy. And we don't want anybody to feel undervalued because why would you? Why would you? When I see sometimes what the rates for a position are when I look on Indeed to kind of get a feel for it, I'm just astonished how little some places want to pay folks for doing a not so easy job. So that is a very, very primary focus on my end. And I also am sort of like, somebody figured out that despite what some may think, I actually am pretty handy, so I can fix things. And so that is something that I enjoy doing, tinkering. When things break here or are not working, I always like to be like, well, let me try and fix it. And I haven't electrocuted myself yet, or
I don't know. I'm pretty sure you just did. I'm pretty sure you just did.
I got like a little jolt. I'm not talking like full on electrocution. But yeah, I love it. So I've moved into my responsibilities are much more focused, but now I can provide all that attention to making sure the needs of our team members are met, make sure that our messaging when it comes to why you want to work at DeliverThat, why this is an excellent place to start or continue your career. That's where I get to shift my focus to. It's what I'm most passionate about. So I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think the life cycle, obviously, I mean, I don't even know. Would you Would you consider yourself employee number one outside of John and Aaron?
Well, you'd almost have to say that. Yeah, I was the third person.
Right.
So, in the first person sort of involved in the actual catering aspect of the operation, to see if we could get it off the floor.
Yeah. It's wild. And then obviously where we are now, like you said, now you're literally just making sure the business has the people that makes it keep going. So it's a wild life cycle of a journey. I know Jim just shouted us out. We're going on an hour here, so I want to make sure we get in the last segment here, so we don't make this go too long. So we're gonna close it out with this or that. I just need you to give me one or the other. We'll touch on them a little bit as we go.
Okay.
This first one's gonna be a interesting answer. I really, because you go all over the place with this one, but early mornings or late nights?
Late nights.
And you're like a late night guy.
Yes.
Like you're 3-4 a.m. sometimes we're going to bed, like later. Sometimes you come in the office past noon, but I'm pretty sure you stay here past midnight. Like what are we working on usually?
Well, give you an idea. I left on Tuesday night / Wednesday morning at 3:15 a.m.
Hell yeah.
Because we were trying to get the office,
of course.
reset up and just making sure everybody's connected the way they need to be. Now, the funny thing is people might say, well, Dan, you come in the office at 12. I also say, send me a Slack message at 7:30 a.m. and see how long it takes to get a response. Generally under 15 minutes. So I am always readily available. The time I might spend at home is when I need a little bit more focus and just directed energy on something that's critical to get done. And yes, there are instances where, hey, everybody needs at least 6 hours of sleep. And if you're going at it till 4 a.m.,
that takes you till past 10. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, that math adds up. We'll keep it moving right along. I'm not sure about this one for you, so we'll just ask it. Would you rather be hot or be cold?
I enjoy the heat.
Okay.
Yep. I'm a big fan of warm weather. Send me there. Dry heat's even better. So out in the desert.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
It's been 75 and sunny here all week, so it's been a great week in Ohio. I think I know this one, but we're gonna ask it anyway. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
You have a dog, correct?
Yeah, I shared custody of a dog,
okay.
Of a wiener dog.
Yeah.
A little oh god, he's so bad, but good. He's a little antisocial, but he's adorable. Like you can't help but just like squeeze him to death. But he's definitely reminded me of how much enjoyment you can get from having a dog.
Yeah.
Nothing against cats.
Another companion. Yeah, always. I honestly have no idea what the answer to this one is. Books or movies?
The best I can answer this is that I've seen a movie that was based off a book, and I read the book.
Okay.
Book was infinitely better.
Oh, yeah. I think everyone says that's the case.
I would say that if you're comparing, you got one story and it's made into a movie and it's originally from a book, whatever. If it's in that situation, I'm going with the book.
Okay. Do you have any scenarios, any movie you could point out that you would say was better than the book?
Ooh. Honestly, not off the top of my head.
What's your favorite book that you were excited to see get turned into a movie?
All right, we're going to have to cut this because it's American Psycho.
I had no idea that was a book.
And Fight Club.
Fight Club for sure.
Definitely cut the American Psycho, because if anybody's familiar with that movie or book, they're going to be like, this guy.
That's
trouble.
That's Christian Bale, right?
Yeah. He played Patrick Bateman in that, and it was originally written by Bret Easton Ellis, who is an interesting author, to say the least. But
amazing. All right, and we will we'll close it out here. Let these people and their viewership cooking at home or going out to eat.
I'm actually a pretty darn good cook, but I can't grill. I'm sorry, Jimmy. I know it's an embarrassment. But given the option, I'd much rather cook. I think where people go towards like eating out is just like the cleaning up and making sure you have the right ingredients and all that other fun stuff. But if you're saying, hey Dan, would you rather, you know, trying to think of the best way, like, hey, breakfast. Would you rather go out and have breakfast, or would you rather make it yourself? I make some of the best scrambled eggs and French toast. You get the bacon just like
a real difficult meal to make.
Shut up. But either way,
put those eggs in a pan and go.
No, there's much more to it. You know, see, as amateur. But you know, but just give you that's just an example. Like breakfast, I can absolutely dominate, and I much rather make it at home, even though there's a little bit of a mess, and it would knock the out of, I'd say, 90% of the places that you can get a breakfast eaten out. I'm beating that with what I can make at home.
I will say too that the point you touched on with going out to eat, like it being easier and everything too. I think if you have a family, the eating out aspect is probably a lot more intriguing as opposed to like you and I, single guys. Like you're cooking for one person. The cleanup is pretty quick and eat. You're cleaning like a pan, maybe a pot.
Mine is like throwing the soup can away.
Yeah, right. So like that part of things I think also makes cooking at home a little easier.
The tray from my Hungry Man dinner just into the trash. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it's without like you said, single, no children. Not having to,
worry about it.
Put food on 4 people's plate and make sure that everybody's got enough to eat and all that other stuff. It's a lot less stressful to just go out to eat and enjoy that experience.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a Dan Hoffman Meet the Team, folks. If you see, I was gonna say if you see our employee newsletters, no one sees those because you're not employees unless you're an employee watching this, but. Per Dan fashion, this has gone pretty long.
You're the one asking questions.
Yeah, I like it. I like talking to Dan. It's always a good time. I love Dan. Hopefully you guys got to know Dan a little bit more, as did I. Heard some stories I'd never heard before, some tidbits that I was very intrigued by. So Dan, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you guys very soon. Thank you.